We've put together a fantastic panel of visionaries working on the front lines of public libraries and cities to share with you their vision for where the public library is going. The panel is moderated by just the perfect person. Atlantic Magazine and their sister site Atlantic Cities has been doing a fantastic job covering the issues of the evolving library and the library of the future. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Sommer Mathis, the editor of Atlantic Cities, who will be your moderator and host for this morning's conversation. Sommer.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for breakfast. So we are here to talk about the Public Library Reimagined, which I think is a really apt description because libraries all over the country and indeed the world are in the midst of a pretty remarkable transformation. Gone are the days when libraries can afford to be mere repositories of things or even just of information. So my name is Sommer Mathis. We've actually recently rebranded the Atlantic Cities, and so I'm now editor of CityLab.com. But that is the Atlantic sister site dedicated to the most pressing issues facing today's cities and neighborhoods. So joining me today to help us all understand exactly how and why what public libraries are transforming. Immediately next to me is Brian Bannon. He was the commissioner of the Chicago Public Library. Before moving to Chicago, Brian was the chief information officer for the San Francisco Public Library, where he managed digital strategy, information, public media, and online services. Next, we have Tessie Guillermo, who is president and CEO of ZeroDivide, an organization that aims to help communities bridge the digital divide and transform themselves through technology. And finally, we have John Palfrey, president of the board of directors of the Digital Public Library of America, a trustee at the Knight Foundation, and when he's not busy researching and teaching on new media and learning, he serves as head of school at Phillips Academy, Andover. So please join me in welcoming our panel, and thank you for coming. So we all know that we're living in an age when consumers can download entire collections of books and periodicals in seconds. And yet, a few months ago, the Pew Research Center found that more than 2/3 of Americans say that they are engaged with their public libraries. Earlier this month, the Institute for Museum and Library Services found that attendance at library programs have increased more than 30% nationwide since 2004. So it's maybe not the most intuitive time as we're moving fast into the digital age and really solidifying what all that means. People are using libraries more than ever. So what's going on here? Are libraries shifting permanently away from being collections of books and toward something more like a community center? Brian, what's happening in Chicago?
Well, I think that I'm glad you started with that question, and there's something wonderful about libraries in that books are associated with libraries in such a strong and positive way. It's also one of the great liabilities, particularly of public libraries, because our missions are so much bigger than a format, and books, as much as we all love them, are a format for sharing and distributing knowledge. And I think that libraries, our core mission hasn't changed. And in fact, the way that we've been behaving as anchor institutions, centers of learning, has been pretty consistent. And Chicago Public Library is 140 years old. And we've been sort of performing against that mission in pretty interesting and radical ways over that 140-year period. So in some ways, if we really look at history, libraries, in my view, are one of the great sort of innovation stories that we don't talk about. That how many institutions do we know today that are 140 years old that are experiencing record-breaking use, and that record-breaking use is consistent over time. So we've seen this big upswing. So there's something that libraries are doing right, but they've known how to do it for a long time. And so I think what we're doing in Chicago is just continuing to expand and advance our mission. We're just doing it in different ways, and I'll give you a few examples later.
Okay, great. And Tessie, in your work with your clients and library clients, what are you seeing?
So I was fortunate to be one of the participants on the Aspen dialogue last year on the public libraries. And the themes that sort of emerged from that dialogue really relate very much to what I sort of encounter in the work that we do with communities, particularly underserved communities. Those are the themes of people, place, and platform. And so to the extent that the mission of libraries hasn't changed, the ability to sort of rally around these themes of people, not just the librarians, but the patrons that come, place, the rooting of libraries in community, in place, really sort of as an anchor institution that has access to and provides access to all of the other sort of essential services and activities that are going on in place. And then platform, and I think that's probably one of the things that's more emergent in the notion of libraries. Platform where now, as a central entity, both physically and virtually, you're gathering up sort of a network of people in different places, doing different things that now have a common platform from a virtual standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint. They can come together and do lots of different things, really sort of do this innovation work, but also just do basic community building, basic learning together. And that, I think, really allows for the library to become very agile and flexible and continue its growth and its value.
John?
I agree totally with Brian's historical take, and I totally agree with Tessie's theoretical take. I have to say I'm not quite as sanguine, though, maybe, as those responses would suggest. I happen to believe that libraries are more important in a digital age than they were prior. I think actually the importance of libraries continues to grow. The importance of public libraries continues to grow for reasons that we can talk about. But I actually worry that if what we do is rely on what Brian is describing, this sort of sense of nostalgia for the books and the must and all of that, I actually think that the support for public libraries could erode. And I think actually if they turn into community centers, that would be a bad thing. So I think there's work to be done in this reframing, and I think there's really urgent and important things that we can and should do.